Hey guys, welcome back to World of Tanks. My name is Bruce and today I want to present a tutorial for auto-loading heavy tanks, the most difficult tank class in World of Tanks. Let's go. I already made multiple autoloader tutorials that you might want to watch as well. Now, while autoloading medium and light tanks do not only rely on their firepower as they also have other strength, such as spotting ability or mobility, heavy tanks don't. Autoloading heavy tanks are nothing but heavy tanks just with a magazine, so while their firepower might be superior, they have no other strength and as such are very tough to master. I'm thinking of tanks like the MX-50B or this T-57 Heavy. In this video I will tell you everything you need to know to master this most difficult and challenging tank class in World of Tanks. Alright, first game with the Rhinoceronte. And the first thing I want to present to you is 5 golden tips and tricks for heavy tank autoloader gameplay. So my first tip for you is you are a heavy tank. So compared to, for example, tanks like the Batchat, like the TVP, like the Char Future 4 and others, you are a heavy tank with no other strength. Because in general, heavy autoloader tanks or autoloading heavy tanks have no camo as they are heavy tanks, they lack mobility as they are heavy tank, and usually compared to heavily armored heavy tanks they also lack armor. So the one and only strength you have in your autoloader tank in general, as I said, for example the Rhinos is a bit different, but we'll come to this later on in the video. You have no other strength than your firepower. And so this leads to tip number 1, which is you have to be patient and you have to wait for your opportunity. This is tip number 1 and basically the golden rule if you're playing an autoloader tank. Nice, we can deal 993 damage at the beginning of the game, which is excellent. So yeah, you always have to be patient. This is extremely important also for other autoloader tanks, like for example the Batchat, but it is vital for heavy autoloader tanks in World of Tanks. Now, tip number 2 is in your autoloader heavy tank, you have to constantly observe the minimap to detect opportunities. For example, isolated tanks and the dynamics of the game, how the game is developing. So you always want to look out for an opportunity for your tank, because once again, in general, you have no other strength. You cannot play vision games because you're a heavy tank. You, in general, lack the mobility to relocate fast, i.e. to make a very delayed decision to relocate. You have to lead turn this, and so you have to constantly monitor the minimap. Now, tip number 3 is you should never engage multiple tanks at the same time. In your autoloader heavy tank, you always want to have support. You do not want to fight a 1v-many situation. Maybe if your clip potential is well enough to take out the adversary tank, you might want to take on a 1v1 situation. But in general, you want to fight with your teammates because they can give you the support that you need if your clip is emptied. And you do not want to fight against multiple tanks because, as I said, in general, the armor profile is lackluster of your tank, and so you do not want to lose too many HP if you're fighting against multiple adversary tanks. So always be aware of the support of your team and do not play in a 1v-many situation. Tip number 4 is you should always preserve an exit option if it is possible. If possible, never bring yourself into a situation where there is no option to exit. This, of course, in general depends. It depends on the situation. Sometimes there is no exit option, and the only choice you have is either to make damage or to not make damage. And then in this case, it might be beneficial to, you know, take what you have and then simply push in and make damage. But in general, you should always understand the dynamics of the game, understand the map and how the game is developing, and then always preserve an exit option, because you will only be successful in your autoloader heavy tank if you get the chance to empty your clip multiple times in the game. If you only empty your clip once and then, you know, get taken out of the game, you will not be successful. And my tip number 5 is always try to outtrade your enemy with your clip. Now, what do I mean? Of course, with your clip potential, you can basically outtrade every tank in the game, in general. However, you also should not insist on delivering your whole clip. It depends on the situation. Now, if you take a shot from the adversary tank, then you should use the reload of this tank in order to pump out as much damage as you can. If you can take out a tank, you should maybe even take a second shot of the adversary tank, but then take him out. But sometimes you should only make one shot or maybe only 2 shots in order to not take damage by the adversary tank. And it really depends on the situation, but you should always try to outtrade. And what do I mean with outtrade? I mean trade positively. You should always try to trade positively with your heavy autoloader tank. And you have the potential to do so because you are playing in an autoloader tank with a full clip. So that's what you should always try to do. So those are 5 golden tips for your autoloader heavy tank gameplay. And now we have to talk about the most important thing, and that is you have to understand the characteristics of your tank. So for example, the Reno Toronto has armor, but only if you're playing hull down. Now, if you want to learn more about this tank, then feel free to check out videos that I made about this tank. The armor works, but only if you're playing hull down. You do not have DPM, you have a precise gun, but only if you're stationary, because the dispersion values are horrible. And of course, as it is a heavy tank, you do not have camo and you're also lacking mobility. So with this tank, you can actually play hull down better than compared to other auto-loading heavy tanks. Maybe apart from the Kranwagen, which is simply made for playing hull down. But yeah, it is slightly different, and of course we have more sophisticated auto-loading heavy tanks, which we will take a look at in the next games, like the MX-50B and also the T-57. But yeah, so if you play the Reno Toronto, you can actually play hull down, and that's something that you should exploit apart from your enhanced firepower of your 3-shot magazine. So the next tank is the MX-50B, and let's quickly pause here and talk about how you should play this tank and what the strength of this tank are. So in order to learn how we need to play the MX-50B, let's take a look at the stats and compare it to the E100, a true heavy tank. So immediately we notice that we have a decent DPM. Of course, we have an enhanced firepower because we have an autoloader clip. We have a relatively precise gun with good gun stats. We have a very nice top speed. So overall good mobility. We are flexible with 10 degrees of gun depression, but we are lacking armor. So take a look at this. We are lacking armor, we are lacking HP. And of course, as we are heavy tank, yes, we have of course better camo, but I mean 3.82 is obviously not a good camo value. So as we are still a heavy tank, we lack camo. And yeah, so that's our stats. And let's now take a look at the map. So this is how the game usually develops on Outpost. And I put the MX right here. And with the MX, you always want to play so that you have distance in between you and other tanks, indicated by this circle right here. Why? Well, because you do not have any armor whatsoever. Your turret armor is completely trash, and every tank will simply pen you, no matter if it is a tier 8 tank or a tier 10 tank. But you have a relatively precise guns. So what you want to do is you want to, let's say, conduct maybe third line gameplay, and you always want to keep moving around so that you bring this amount of distance in between you and your adversary tanks. So this is why, in my opinion, depending on the situation, of course, you can conduct second line gameplay. This works from time to time, depending on the situation. But in general, I would not want to brawl with those heavy tanks, as you cannot bring enough distance in between you and your adversary tanks. So you have to think what opportunities you can get if, or depending on how the game develops, and you always want to move around, play or bring yourself to a very central position on the map so that you always can keep this distance in between you and your opponents. So let's see how the game develops. So with this tank, you need to play passively, and you have to really think through every, let's say, step that you do with this tank. Now, with this tank, you cannot rush an important position, as you are a heavy tank and as you are lacking the mobility compared to medium tanks and compared to light tanks. So if you would think of, let's say, pushing, you know, the castle there in the middle of the map in the E5 position, forget about it. You do not have the speed to do so. Of course, this is a very fast heavy tank compared to other heavy tanks, but you do not have any armor. Plus, you are not as fast as medium tanks, like, for example, the Lion. And so it is not an option to make such an aggressive push with this tank. So instead, I want to go to this position right here, because maybe the Selma will spot one or another tank. And then I will simply follow one of my tips that I talked about, which is to exercise extreme patience in this tank. And I simply want to wait until an opportunity arises. Now, of course, I could have also gone to the heavy flank and played alongside with my heavy tanks. But in my opinion, and as I said before, you should always bring this tank into a very central position, because you do not want to play too close to adversary tanks. You want to bring distance between you and other tanks. This tank is more as an autoloader, let's say, sniper tank. But of course, you do not want to snipe, you know, for more than 300 meters or so. But you want to have a range of, let's say, 200 to maybe 300, 400 meters, or 200 to 300 meters. So that you always have a chance to fall back into cover and then to leave the scenery and to relocate to another flank. Okay, can I take a shot? No, my reload time is actually not my reload time, but my aiming time is a bit too weak in order to squeeze out a snapshot onto the MX-30. So let's simply relocate. Now, looks like our tanks are engaged in a fight with the adversary tanks on the J5, J6 position. So they will most likely not take a shot onto me when I am pushing into the middle. So that's my chance that I can take. And now I can finally go into this very central position, which will be beneficial later on in the game. So that was my opportunity to make this play. And from now on, I can create a crossfire situation to those advancing heavy tanks if they are, if they keep advancing towards our base. So that's what I want to do. I want to position myself so that I can get a line of fire, but I do not want to play in the first line. And I also barely do. I also barely want to conduct the second line gameplay with this tank, because this tank is not made for one-dimensional, you know, brawling activities or brawling gameplay. You simply want to bring distance between you and other tanks. So let's see how it goes. That's actually what I want to see. That's exactly what I want to see. So let's go here, and I need to move a little bit forward. Lion is also trying to exploit this opportunity. So let's now take a shot, and okay. Gun is actually trolling me, which is not good. First shot and then last shot, and alright, that was super unlucky. The gun actually really trolled me. and we only made 1 shot out of our 4-shot clip, which is insanely bad, but that's sometimes how World of Tanks is. Greetings from ING. Okay, let's simply reload our gun and let's see whether another tank also makes a mistake and pushes out, so that once again we can take we can empty our clip and create a crossfire situation. Yeah, I do not want to move out here because then I will take a shot. So let's simply reverse. Plus there is the FV in this position, so as soon as I peek out, you know, behind the wall, that's where he can take a shot onto me. Let's take shots onto the E75. Another bad shot. I was... Okay. Looks like ING is really trolling me right here. And so this time only 2 shots out of... excuse me. 2 shots out of 4, which is another very poor result. But anyway, we are manning a very strong position, and so we could at least reduce the object 279E and also the E75 to a one-shottable situation, which is good. And now I think it is time for another opportunity. Selma is pushing, or Selma is pushing into this position, so I think I might be able to take out the T49. He is engaged into a fight with those guys, and now here you go. That's what I want to see. Nice. Okay, so I want to fall back. I leave the shots in my clip so that if the T62 Alpha pushes me, then I at least have 2 shots in my magazine. Now, as I'm approaching the corner, I can reload. There he is, but I have relocated so that he cannot take a shot onto me. I will reload my clip and then it is time to push him out. The game is on the winning side. So let's see. Line is down to being one-shottable. Looks like the 121B in the north is flanking the Type 71. He's taken out. So 10-6. Game is on the winning side, and now I need to make more damage and I need to empty my clip. The problem is I will not be able to take him out, but I think now it is time to simply rush in and make more damage, as the game is, in my opinion, already won. So let's simply, you know what, take a shot onto him and let's now try to ram him. Okay, he takes out my driver, so, oh, okay, that was another poor luck. So I need to run now because my clip is empty. I have 800 HP remaining, so let's simply try to use the mobility of this tank. Oh no, he tracks me. Okay, that's now super bad. He tracks me, takes another shot. I'm now down to being one-shottable. I have a couple of seconds. He bounces and I can take him out. Okay, that was actually that was actually now pure luck. Maybe you know, because of the bad luck that we had earlier on in the game. In the end, we made 3.6k damage, and I think we followed the tips that I talked about previously. We exercised extreme patience. We waited for an opportunity to arise, and then we took this opportunity. Plus, we always had distance in between us and the adversary tanks, and that's exactly how you want to play the AMX 50B. Okay, last game, and this time we play the T57 heavy tank, which is a very special autoloader heavy tank. So let's pause right here and let's also take a look at the stats of this tank and then understand how we need to play this particular autoloader tank. So in order to understand how we need to play this tank, let's take a look at the stats and let's compare this tank to the AMX 50B that we just talked about. So instantaneously we notice that we have an even better DPM. This tank has the best DPM of all autoloader tanks in the game. Firepower is great, especially the 2 seconds intra-clip reload is really fantastic. The gun handling stats, however, are very, very poor. Take a look at those horrible dispersion factors. The mobility is very lackluster. Power to weight ratio plus top speed. We only have 8 degrees of gun depression. However, we have a much better armor. Now, this armor is, of course, not comparable to a tank like the E100, but it is much better compared to the MX-50B, and it lets you, or you will, at least sometimes bounce shots of adversary tanks. HP is better, and of course, we do not need to take a look at the camo values because we are a heavy tank. after all. So this time we play on Oyster Bay, and once again I parked the T-57 right here in the cap. And with this tank, it is important to understand that you cannot bring as much distance to you and the adversary tanks simply because your gun handling is lackluster. So this is the distance where you want to fight against the other heavy tanks. And so this really limits you. So you cannot play in a very central position on the map, because then you cannot simply engage other tanks, or it will be pure luck if you hit. Instead, you have to really go forward and then play on one or another flank. And of course, you do not want to play here, but you want to support your heavy tanks more to this later on in the game. So due to the stats of this tank, you have to go much more forward compared to the AMX 50B, and you have to decrease the distance between you and the other tanks. Alright, so as we just saw, with this tank, we cannot bring as much distance in between us as with the AMX 50B, simply because our gun is lackluster when it comes to the precision and the gun stats. So we need to play very close to the adversary tanks simply because of our poor gun handling. Now, on the good side, we actually have a bit of armor. I would say the armor is lackluster, but sometimes you can actually bounce a shot in the T-57. Problem being is the armor is so weak that you simply cannot count on your armor, and that makes the T-57 so tough to play. In addition to this, we have a horrible mobility, as we just saw in the stats, so we need to play this tank differently compared to the to the MX-50B. And due to the fact that we have a lackluster mobility, just like other heavy tanks, we cannot simply, you know, change the flanks and be very flexible as in the MX-50B. So with this tank, as opposed to the MX-50B, you do not want to conduct, let's say, third line gameplay. You want to play second line gameplay. That's how you want to play this tank. Now you also cannot brawl and you know, conduct first line gameplay simply because you lack the armor. And here it is very important to talk about the tip that we you know, that I previously talked about in the first game. You do not want to fight in a 1v many situation. Okay, here's a nice chance. Rambo, you know what? Let's spam. Okay, we did not hit the first shot. Let's see, go. Nice. And bam. Nice, we can take him out. Excellent. 500 damage at the beginning of the game, simply because this tank rushed into an over-aggressive position. But what I wanted to say is, you should not play in a 1v many situation, because you will lose your HP much quicker as you think of if you do this. So instead, you also want to, you know, surprise your adversary tanks. And once again, as you have to conduct second line gameplay as opposed to the AMX-50B with its, as I call it, third line gameplay, you know, the chance of surprising your adversary tanks is actually very, very slim, because they will find out relatively quickly that you are playing on their flank. In general, of course, you should always play the heavy lane, simply because medium tanks and light tanks will outmaneuver you faster as you think of. And so, plus, in addition to this, you really have to support your heavy tank teammates in order to, you know, decrease the HP pool of the adversary heavy tanks. Plus, of course, as this gameplay is very, very difficult, all in all, you have to exercise extreme patience in this tank. Even more than other autoloader heavy tanks. And that's what I'm doing right here. Now I'm thinking of supporting our team when the T-57 of the enemy team is making an aggressive push. But I'm also thinking of supporting the E-75, which gets now attacked by the IS-4, and I think this is the correct gameplay. I think this is my opportunity. And now we are back to what I said in the first game. I need to outrate this tank. So he will take a shot onto the E-75, no, on me, but that's not a problem. I will simply empty my clip because I want to trade as positively as I can. Now I can fall back. I'm playing alongside with my teammate with the E-75, so I have cover, which is excellent. And this is why I can make a full clip and I only take 418 damage. So I make 1.6k damage and I only take 418 in return. Those are the trades that you want to do in the T-57. Now take a look at the object 2684. Now I do not want to lose so many HP because he can fall back into cover and I will most likely not hit him or not pen him with my super unprecise gun. So I wait until the E75 takes a shot, and now it's time for me to make another great trade against the object 257. Okay, make an aiming mistake. You should always aim to the frontal portion of this tank. And so my first shell does not hit, but I make 2 shells out of 4, which is nice. And the good thing about this tank, of course, is its phenomenal DPM. So I can reload in about 20 seconds, 20, maybe 22 seconds. I think you can bring this down to below 20 seconds if you're using all the premium consumables, which I do not do, as you know. So my clip will be reloaded and I can take another shot and maybe I can take him out. Excellent. Of course, the killing feature in this tank is the insane intra-clip reload. This sets this tank apart from any other autoloader in the game. So let's reload the clip. We already made 2.9k damage, 1.4 assisting damage, so an excellent result if you ask me in this tank already. But let's see what we can get. Of course, we have heat ammunition, and this is great if we want to fight against the against those you know, nicely angled TDs, and we can, with a little bit of aiming, make 3 out of our 4 shots. So 3.7k damage, 1.4k assisting damage. In my opinion, this showed exactly how you should play the T-57. And key to success is to take a look at the stats of your tank, no matter what tank you play, and to then try to exploit the strength of your tank. This is what you have to take into consideration, and this is basically, you know, the overall lesson out of this video. So always try to play the tanks according to their strength. And I think with the T-57 and with the AMX 50B and maybe with the Rhino Chironte, we have 3 very different tanks that are tough to play, but that you can master if you apply my golden tips and tricks. Alright guys, that was it for today with the tutorial about autoloader heavy tanks in World of Tanks. What do you think about this tank class? Have you started playing the T-57 Heavy or the AMX 50B? Do you think those tanks are overall competitive? Do you like to play them, or do you think they are super special and overall lackluster? Just leave a comment in the comment section down below. And as always, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. This really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. If you find this video extremely helpful, then feel free to support me via Super Thanks. This way you can make a one-time donation. You just have to click this button underneath the video. If you adore this channel and you want to consistently support me, then consider subscribing to my channel or become a member, once again with the click of a button underneath the video. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time in another World of Tanks video.